Hey everyone, what's up? It's me again, and in this video I wanted to just share a quick 2-stone run I did in fresh SSF using Incinerate of Venting. So I ended up completing this 2-stone run in about 9 hours, which took a while because I AFK'd a lot and I went at a very leisurely pace, but yeah, I was just really curious that given all the buffs to channeling skills in 3.26, whether or not Incinerate of Venting specifically could actually be a good League starter in SSF, and I think the answer is yes. It's a build with very interesting properties. The build actually clears really well and the single target damage is extremely good. In addition, the late game scaling of the build is really good as well. I only played this run until 2 stone, but after that you can get up to like 20 million damage, which is actually pretty good in my opinion. So but the build definitely, being a channeling skill has its pros and cons, so I just wanted to make this video and kind of put some information out there because there's not that much information out there about channeling skills. I think a lot of people either aren't building it correctly or they don't really they're kind of afraid of channeling skills, right? Because it's channeling, but I think it's actually like kind of a good League starter, honestly. And yeah, in this video, I just want to kind of talk about that. So as you can see here, I'm just leveling with Incinerate of Venting, or I'm leveling with Incinerate, and then I farmed Lab for Incinerate of Venting eventually, and then I transitioned over to that. But yeah, I guess the first question is why Incinerate of Venting? So there's a couple things. So first of all, Incinerate of Venting got buffed a lot this league, just numerically speaking. And then there's a new channeling support gem, Focus Channeling, which gives you a lot of damage as well. In addition, you can gain a power charge per second while channeling, allowing you to always have maximum power charges, even in mapping. And then you also have Infused Channeling support, which also got a little buff. So all these things made me very curious about channeling skills this league, which is why I wanted to do this 2-stone run. And basically, the PoB looks really good, in my opinion, although it is a channeling skill, so, yeah. But in my experience playing it, it was completely fine. Like white mobs, rare mobs, and bosses all died pretty fast. Here I'm just doing like a tier 1 map now. The only thing that build struggled against was blue packs for some reason, because blue packs don't die instantly like white mobs, and they have a lot of minions in there, so they hit you and then you have to move and it breaks your channeling, and it's like kind of annoying. But like apart from blue mobs, the build actually felt pretty good in basically all content despite being a channeling skill. So yeah, I think it's actually a pretty good League starter, honestly, in SSF. And I guess my verdict is like, if you can tolerate farming Incinerate of Venting, then you might want to consider League starting this. So yeah, this is Elementalist basically. It's pretty straightforward to level this character, honestly. Here's like a tier 5 map. Basically I used Rolling Magma from level 1 to 12, and then at level 12 you get Incinerate, and then I just swapped to Incinerate as you saw earlier, and I basically used Incinerate all the way until Uberlab. And the main game plan is if you get Incinerate of Venting before Uberlab, you just use it. Otherwise you have to like farm lab for a little bit to get Incinerate of Venting. It is kind of annoying because there is Incinerate of Expanse as well, so it's kind of difficult to land Incinerate of Venting specifically, but I think it's worth it. I think if you spend a little bit of time to farm it, the damage actually is pretty good. As you can see, that was like a tier 14 on like a 4-link. This is a tier 15 map here, so yeah, I guess one interesting thing about this build is that like the damage progression felt extremely good. Like I have never played a build that had this much damage in like tier 15s and like tier 14s at League start. This is a tier 15 map boss, right? And as you can see, the damage is extremely good. And yeah, like of all the League starters I've played, I don't think I've ever had a build that like so easily ramps damage into red maps. A lot of builds, they kind of hit a wall, right? And they kind of hit a wall around red maps. It's like you get into tier 14s and tier 15s and you're like, shit, I suddenly deal no damage. But this build does not hit a wall in damage at all, which is an interesting property about League starting this build, which is like, if you League start Incinerate of Venting, you will never have damage problems. whether you're on a 3-link, a 4-link, you'll never have damage problems. The only problem you'll run into is maybe, you know, you'll feel a little bit squishy when clearing full screens of enemies, or like screens of enemies that have like a lot of dangerous ranged monsters that are like blues that you can't kill instantly. It's like you may run into some survivability issues, but you'll never run into damage issues, which is one reason I think this may be a very underrated League starter, right? Because a lot of the problems that League starters run into is that you have low damage, but you never have this problem in this build. So yeah, as you can see here, I'm doing Eater. I did get a 5-link during leveling, but it doesn't really matter. The 5th link is just like infused channeling, which is like 25% more damage. So like you could easily do everything with like less damage than that. I'm also not sure my Merc is even helping me here. I was basically running an Anger Merc for this leveling run, but I don't know if Anger increases my damage by 50%, so this Eater might actually have like more HP than it normally would in a normal League start run, so just keep that in mind. But yeah, the leveling was very smooth. You know, it's just Elementalist leveling. You just get some golems and then you hit monsters, and Shaper of Storms gives you shock, and that's basically it. And then here I have Exarch as well. So doing Exarch was a little bit hard for this build. Not damage-wise. Damage-wise, as you can see, it was completely fine. This is like 9-hour Exarch damage. As you can see, the damage is extremely good. However, I did die a lot on the ball phase, mostly because of the golems. And this is something that I thought was kind of funny. Like between the Merc and the golems, I just could not see any of the balls. So I just ran it, like the balls were just exploding everywhere. And I just kept dying to exploding balls. But yeah, I don't know, maybe I was supposed to like put all my golems into one piece of gear and then like equip and unequip them when the ball phase starts, because when the golems are around you just can't survive like that. But yeah, other than that, the fight was pretty straightforward. And yeah, from this spot, if you have a 5-link, your damage is pretty good, and then you can just like go into, you can just like do whatever other content you want to do. Another cool thing about this build though is that like the scaling potential is really good in my opinion. I think in my POV I had like 20 million damage if you have like dual wielding wands, or like 15 million damage ish if you don't dual wield wands. So I think the build actually like can League start pretty well, and like even after, I guess what I'm trying to say is like even after you do 2 stone, your scaling is still like pretty reasonable, and you can even get more damage as well if you decide to go for the Elementalist minus res exposure node. But I chose to go for the chill node for a little bit more survivability. It's up to you. But yeah, like this build scales pretty well past 2 stones, so I do think it's, you know, a reasonable option for a League starter. But yeah, I guess now I'll talk about the POB. Okay, so this is the POB for the build. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward. This is just a spellcasting elementalist type of POB. You have a wand, you have a shield, you go evasion ES with ghost dance for your defense, and that's basically it. Other than that, you just scale, you know, spell damage, crit, and stuff like that. And as you can see, the numbers are pretty reasonable. We have 21 million DPS. This is all SSF viable gear as well that you could easily get. Here you have 18 cast speed as well, which means that you reach maximum stages in just 1 second of channeling. The offensive numbers are really good. High cast speed, very high crit chance, very high crit multi, extremely good AoE as well due to being Elementalist, and then taking this 1 Arcane Expanse wheel here. And then defensively, the build's also very sound. We have 4k HP, 2k ES, with around 16k evasion, which is good enough for mapping. Without Grace, if you have Grace, you have even more than that. With Grace, it's like 30,000 evasion, so it's pretty good. And then 100% spell suppression, of course, and then also Ghost Dance. And that's basically the high-level overview of this build. And so going into the specifics of this build and like theory crafting and why I thought this build was like interesting at all. So there's a couple different things that come together here. So as I mentioned before, the main thing is that channeling skills got buffed a lot. Incinerate of Venting got a huge numerical buff, which ends up to be something around 50% more damage than before. Basically, the buff is just that it got more damage. And then also there's a new gem called Focus Channeling, which gives you a pretty big 60% more damage, which is kind of crazy for a support gem. And then Infused Channeling allowed you to like take 4% less damage from hits as well. And then of course Elementalist gives you a huge amount of buffs that are all very beneficial for the build, as I'll get into soon. And then in addition, the property of Incinerate of Venting being hit based is also very important because we can then scale various hit based things. For example, you can use Immolate support to add a huge amount of fire damage to Incinerate of Venting. The main problem with Incinerate of Venting is that if you look at the gem, the amount of flat damage on it is very low, but it compensates for that by having a large amount of more damage scaling per stage. So if you can find a way to add a lot of damage to Incinerate of Venting, it'll be really good. And then Immolate is a perfect way to add a lot of damage. And this is basically permanently up because we have Shaper of Flames. All hits can ignite, which allows Immolate to basically always be up 100% of the time. And then in addition, you can combo that with the Fire Mastery. Critical strikes do not ignite 100% increased damage with hits. So this is just straight up giving us 100% damage with hits. And we don't care about the downside because with Shaper of Flames, everything always ignites. In addition, Shaper of Flames gives us 40% converted to fire. So it's also very good defensively. And then in addition, because it's a hit-based skill, you can use Shaper of Storms, which gives you a 25% minimum shock. And then with the 10% ailment effect on the small node, the 50% ailment effect from crits on the critical mastery, and then also this static blows wheel, you can see that we're actually able to, where is it? Incinerative Venting Shock. You can actually see that our shock effect is 2.1, and 2.1 times 25 is actually 50%. So as you can see, you can actually inflict 50% shocks using Incinerate of Venting on any enemy, including pinnacle bosses. It's crazy. So it's just like 50% more damage on Shaper of Storms here. So that's extremely good. And then here you also have golems as well. And the golems greatly benefits this build as well. It's just a standard golem build. You take this node and then you take this wheel here, and that's basically all you need. And then here you get Flame Golem, which is AoE and damage, very important for this skill. Ice Golem helps you cap crit, and then the Lightning Golem helps you sustain all of your mana and give you cast speed, and also attack speed for shield charge. And then you have Stone Golem for a little bit of just life regen. Here I was trying out this new tech, which is Guardian's Blessing Anger. So basically, when you press this button, you essentially get an anger aura that lasts around 7 seconds, and then the golem dies. And I just decided to put this on the stone golem in the PoE because if the stone golem dies, it's like not that big of a deal. So it's like an extra like blessing. I haven't actually tried this out, but in theory it should work. So why not do this? But yeah, I just have this here. And yeah, so this golem elementalist. And then the last ascendancy, I wasn't too sure what to go for. So you have a couple options here. The main two options are either Exposure Minus or Shaper of Winter. So Exposure is the most obvious choice. It's just straight up like 25% more damage, as you can see from the tooltip. However, the 25% of damage only applies on single target when you're having your Arcanist brand use Wave of Conviction. So it doesn't really help you in mapping. And then which is like, 25% more damage is good, but also good is Shaper of Winter, because the main problem of this build is that in mapping, if you're not able to channel, you're just going to be dead. And then Shaper of Winter conveniently like slows everything in maps by 40% in addition to reducing their damage. It doesn't quite work on pinnacles because your hit is really small. Like on pinnacles, you're only doing like a 10% chill. So if you're doing a lot of bossing, you should consider respecking Mastermind of Discord. But I find that in mapping, the 40% slow and 20% DR is like so good that I decided to go for this over the 25% more damage. So yeah, that's just the way I built this character. And that basically covers all the main synergies. Other than that, everything is basically just like crit and like cast speed. Pretty straightforward. We're running a dual curse setup with Whispers. It's basically Arcanist Brand, Assassin's Mark Flammability. Pretty straightforward. And then, oh yeah, also, there's a new Caster Mastery, which allows you to gain a power charge every second while channeling a spell. This is actually super nasty, because at the start of the map, you just channel, or as soon as you like fight the first rare, you basically have like 5 power charges. And then you can combo that with the Charge Mastery for 100% increased charge duration. And then basically the power charges last 20 seconds. And then also your frenzy charges from your Assassin's Mark also last 20 seconds. So it's pretty good uptime on power and frenzy charges. It's like 100% uptime, like even in mapping. And then later on, you can also grab endurance charge every X seconds on your body armor, which is like 100% uptime on 3 endurance charges and like mapping eventually, or like a boss fight. So that's pretty good. And then other than that, yeah, the tree is just very straightforward. And another good thing about the tree is that it's very front loaded, right? Like if you look at the tree, basically all of your scaling is in this initial portion here. So like when you go Incinerate at level 12, you have access to basically all of your damage nodes like right off the bat. And that's really good because it makes the campaign like really smooth. So yeah, it's pretty good. And then for the gear, for the gems, it's just pretty straightforward, you know, just stuff. Not much to say here. We're running Arcanist Brand with Wave of Conviction to apply exposure, and then Dual Curse, Flammability, Assassin's Mark. Movement is just Shield Charge, Frostblink. The only alt quality gem you need in this build is Incinerate of Venting. And then, oh yeah, then the aura setup is also pretty flexible as well. So in my 2-stone run, I ended up just using Grace Haste for the entire campaign. And then I did like a Zealotry swap for a single target. But there's like a lot of different options that you can do here. Flesh and Stone Arctic Armor, as I mentioned before, are really good. Purity of Elements is good early on as well. Just a lot of different options. But yeah, I thought I'd mention that. And then this is the gear. The gear is pretty straightforward. For the 4 armor pieces, it's just whatever evasion ES gear you can get. Just try to get life, res, and suppress. Pretty straightforward. If you can grab onslaught on kill on the boots, that's pretty good as well. Amulet is a citrine amulet for the stats. This build does scale very well off of gem level. So trying to get gem level on the amulet, the wand, and the shield is really good. Other good things are cast speed, crit multi, added damage to spells, and spell crit. Just whatever generic caster stuff you can get on your wand and the shield. I did choose to go for a int shield here simply for the damage. Like this int shield is giving me like 25% of my damage, so that's why I decided to go for that instead of like a evasion shield. And then the rings is just amethyst rings to help with chaos res, and the belt is just a heavy belt to help with attributes. And the flask is just whatever. The only 2 flasks that are mandatory is like the jade flask for mapping, and then the diamond flask with the crit mods, so you can like cap out your crit in single target. And yeah, that's basically it. And then for the anointment, I just anointed nimbleness. You can basically anoint whatever you want. There isn't one that's like super good. It's just nimbleness is like cast speed and damage, so like why not get that? But you can anoint whatever. And that basically is the whole build. So yeah, I was just very curious about like channeling skills this league in specific. I was very curious if you could actually league start a channeling skill in SSF, and again, I think the answer is yes. I think you can. This build has the best damage scaling I've ever played of any build in SSF. However, it does kind of suck that you need to stand still for like 3 seconds to kill blue packs. So, yeah. Also, farming Incinerate of Venting kind of sucks as well at League Start. So, yeah, just thought I'd make this video out there, put some more information out there about like channeling skills. I guess the moral of the story is you can League Start Incinerate of Venting and SSF. The damage is good. You'll never run into damage issues. You can get 2 stones super easy. You can farm T16s super easily. However, it is a channeling skill and it's kind of annoying to kill blue packs. So, yeah. Let me know what you think. And yep.